Welcome back to Purpose Driven Church Reunifications. We're on day 66, and we are getting ever so close to finishing. We just have, look at that, just that left. So, we are continuing a chapter on turning members into ministers, and if you remember, we are just talking about helping people and guiding people into their ministry. And he's continuing and giving practical guidance on how they do that and how they've done it at Saddleback. Right now, he's emphasizing that it's important that once people begin serving in a ministry, they also need on-the-job training. Actually, that's more important and effective than spending a lot of time training them before starting a ministry. He says, at Saddleback, we require only minimal pre-service training because we feel that people don't even know the right questions to ask until they're actually involved with ministry, which I think is very true. Another reason we don't use pre-service training is that we want to involve people as quickly as possible in actual ministry. A long, drawn-out pre-service training causes most people to lose their initial enthusiasm. I found that the kind of people who are willing to train for 52 weeks before beginning to serve are usually not very effective when they finally start serving. They tend to be professional students who enjoy learning about ministry more than doing it. We want people to dive right in and get wet because only then will they be highly motivated to learn how to swim. The best way to begin is to begin. He says, so he talks about here this lay ministry training program that they have. It's called SALT, S-A-L-T. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a 2-hour training rally on the first Sunday evening of each month. And it's essentially for the core of their church. And they get together, and there's an extended time of worship, recognition of all ministries, testimonies, commissioning of new lay pastors, ministers, prayer in groups, insider church news, ministry training, and a vision message by me on our values, vision, and the character qualities and skills needed for leadership. He says that in addition to that, they also have a variety of training classes. So like helping people to, what does it mean to be a ministry leader, teaching the different skills, also for things like youth ministry, children's ministry, music ministry, counseling, lay pastoring, just to name a few. So they really have a lot in this area of training in terms of after people get started. He emphasizes this point a lot. He's emphasized it in the past in the book too. He says, never start a ministry without a minister. He says, we never create a ministry position and then try to fill it. It doesn't work. The most critical factor in a new ministry isn't the idea, but the leadership. Each ministry rises or falls on the leadership. Without the right leader, a ministry will just stumble along, possibly doing more harm than good. Trust in God's timing. The staff at Saddleback never start new ministries. We may suggest an idea, but we let the idea percolate until God provides the right person to lead it. I shared earlier that we didn't have an organized youth ministry until the church was running nearly 500 in attendance, and we didn't have an organized singles ministry until we had about 1,000. Why? God had not provided the leadership until then. It is important never to push people into a ministry. If you do, you'll be stuck with a motivation problem for the life of the ministry. Most small churches get in a hurry and try to do too much. Instead, pray and wait for God to bring you the person best shaped to lead a particular ministry. Then let them start it. Don't worry if there's no interest in a particular ministry. It's important for church leaders to have a long-term perspective concerning their church's development. Solid growth takes time. And I think these are really wise words. And he just says this is how every one of our ministries at Saddleback has started. He uses the example of his wife. She started a Bible study, and it just kept growing and expanding until it eventually needed structure and eventually staff. And this pattern has been repeated over and over and over again. He notes that you should have minimum standards and guidelines. You don't want to delve into it too much, but many times when you're working with people, best intentions are not always enough. But you should keep them clear and brief. You don't want to bury people with procedures and committees, allowing as much freedom as possible. They have a lot of, for them, as long as a person has completed this class 301 and done a SHAPE interview, they can start a new ministry. And as long as they agree to 3 guidelines. First guideline is don't expect the staff to run your ministry, church staff. So he's talking here about these people who have this mindset of, oh, the church should do this, or we should do this. And then when you ask them like who's we or who's the church, then they'll say actually it's the who's we? They say, oh, the church, which usually means the pastor or the staff. He says, someone once told me I've been feeling so burdened by the people in prison that I've been going out there to lead a Bible study. I think the church should do something for those people. I said to him, it sounds to me like the church did do something. You are the church. The next week I told the whole congregation, I release all of you to visit those in prison, feed the hungry, clothe the poor, and shelter the homeless. And you don't even have to tell me, just do it. Represent the church in Jesus' name. This ministry didn't require any staff supervision. Help people realize that they are the church themselves. The second guideline is the ministry must be compatible with the church beliefs, values, and philosophy of ministry. He said that this especially is true when you have groups that are like ministries that are co-sponsored by organizations outside the church. These organizations often have different agendas and very different values sometimes, which tends to produce divided loyalties. So they're always very cautious about that. But just in general, whatever ministry you start should be in line with your goals and your values of your church. And lastly, no fundraising is allowed, especially because they have so many ministries. If they're all doing their own fundraising, it would just be like almost like a flea market. And also people would kind of resent eventually getting all these different letters and having all the different sales and stuff. He says you need a unified budget and you need to have a unified church. Leaders of each ministry should submit their financial needs for consideration in the total church budget. So that's all I have time for today. I already went over, again, as always, but tomorrow we'll continue, and thanks for listening.